Chat, man, we're live. We're back, man. We got a good one today. We got a fun one today. That's what we got. We got to talk some changes this offseason. And this is the first step to doing that. I think it's the first kind of outlook on things. I won't be here super long, all right? We'll do our normal breakdowns when the offseason hits. But this is kind of just the first peek at everything, where the Lions are going, where they're headed, what probably needs to be addressed. And I think this is good now because it's fresh. It's fresh in my mind. A lot of this stuff, man, I'm going to have to look back on when the offseason hits, rewatch some film and things like that just to okay, should we keep this guy? I don't really remember. So that kind of thing right now, that's going to take its time of its own. When you get individually, you can't just do that. I mean, I can, but it's not going to be great. Should we keep Davenport? Shoot, I got to watch the film, dude. I don't know. So it's stuff like that. But that said, this is all kind of fresh right now. 5 changes that the Lions should make, I'll say that, to become the Lions again. It had a little ring to it. Also, can y'all hear the beat? I mean, the beat's fire. I just turned it way down, so we'll get into it. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. My man Detroit Sports Talk was here early. That comment, I didn't know that happened, so I'm glad you said that. That's wild that Tyler rolled. Now, he got an offensive coordinator position there, so congrats for him, man. Good for him. That's awesome, especially after 1 year of being our tight ends coach to go get that position. That's pretty sweet. There's going to be a lot of turnover, but it kind of just works out, I think, because it actually fits into what we talked about yesterday. It's not like we had to move off of him. He just went and got another job, got a promotion. So congratulations. But I think from the Lions side, it actually works out pretty well because now we're kind of forced to go address that. And that's something I think they had to address was, hey, let's get a different tight end coach in the building. So that's pretty awesome. Draft Mansour Delane. He's a dog. He is a dog. Is Tyler Linderbaum a realistic option in free agency? I'm going to say no. I don't think Baltimore lets him hit free agency. If he's out there, I think it's realistic. I just don't think Baltimore is going to let him go to free agency, but we'll talk about that a little bit here today. We'll talk about the offensive line. I have some names, early names, but it's not super it's not as deep as it will be when we get to the offseason. There's going to be a lot more digging into some of this stuff, lists, those kind of things. Zion Young, Missouri. Feels like a day 2 kind of pick, potentially. So we're going to do that. Actually, I put together kind of a fun 4-round mock because the Lions don't have a third round draft pick. So I did a mock draft just as an idea of maybe what something could look like. So we'll walk through that as well because I think that's pretty fun too, and it's just going to add more to this video. So when we get to that part, I'll show a little 4-round mock draft, and it has a little trade in there because that's just how we do mock drafts. We trade. So of course, let me get to this list though. Let me pull it up and we can talk through this. I actually think we trade back round 1. Yeah, we could be in a good spot. I mean, I hate the losing, but we could be in a pretty strong spot for what we'd be looking for sitting in this first round. I think right now we're 15th. I definitely don't want to lose the Bears. So I'll take a couple spots to beat the Bears. But that said, even with that, we're going to be in a pretty good spot. I mean, Kansas City's got a top 10 pick this year. That stuff's crazy. I don't think this is a year that you need a top pick in the draft. I think we're actually pretty strong being in the spot that we are because I think the middle of the first round feels like it's going to be a lot of all over the place. I don't think people are going to be truly sure what's going to happen. And it feels like it's going to be maybe one of those drafts like the Jack Campbell-Gibbs draft where you just kind of fall in love with a player, where the Lions took Campbell. I don't think a lot of people thought he'd go round 1, but they took him. They loved him. That's worked out pretty good. I think it could be one of those situations this year where there could be a lot of movement like that, especially knowing Brad. Understand we don't have a 3rd-round pick. That all of that's on the table, and I think that would be a lot of fun. Chiefs are 9. Okay, 9. My bad. That's crazy, though. It's weird to see it. I thought it was fake when I first saw it. I was like, oh, who'd they get that pick from? That's their pick. Okay. I don't know what's going on with the NFL this year. My man, Blitzing Lion, what's up, man? Silent Service is here, too. It is a deep secondary draft. Oh, dude, it's a good secondary draft, bro. I think we might have to dabble in that a little bit. We might have to. If Brian Dable gets fired, Lions should make a call. I'd make that call. I would. Without having done any research, I'd make that call. I like Brian Dable. Wouldn't Brian Dable already get fired? Wait, did he not? Hold up. Maybe I'm thinking of... Oh, okay, I guess not, yeah. I thought he did. I don't know why I was thinking he got fired. Did he not get fired? Okay, maybe he's still there. He was fired. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm like, wait a minute. I feel like I should know this. AJ Halsey. I like AJ Halsey. I think that guy could go high. I think he could go high this year. It's always weird with safeties. I think he could go pretty darn high. All right. Let's get into it. Let's talk about this. Let's go through the changes. Now, this isn't just offseason, addressing needs related. This is just changes in general. But then, like I said, I'll throw a little mock into this at the end, well, not at the end, but as we go through this, which will kind of change it up a bit. But let's start here. Some of this is a carryover from yesterday. I think yesterday's video kind of set the table for what we're talking about today. And some of this is also, I guess, common knowledge, everything we expect to be on here. So here we go. Any real chance Ragnar will come back? I actually think there is a real chance he could come back. I don't want to speak on his health because I don't know. The fact that he didn't pass the physical is concerning. But I don't think it's impossible that he comes back. I don't think it's a crazy idea to think it's on the table. I'm not expecting it. I wouldn't approach the offseason with the expectation that he's going to be back, but I don't think it's impossible that he does come back. Having his contract already laid out for the Lions, gotten the extension he did, seemingly still wants to play football. So if he does have a season where he can just be right and feel good going into a year, which he probably hasn't felt good going into a year in a long time, I think it's on the table that he'd come back. The only question would be, was it a decision of understanding that the season was wrapping up? Or was the fact that he was just feeling good and he was like, I want to go play football again? Because if it was the understanding that, hey, this is a short kind of season I can jump into, then at that point, he probably wouldn't come back. But if it was just, I'm feeling better, I want to go, at that point, he could come back, right? I think it's on the table for sure. It's not like he's 35 years old. This guy could absolutely come back. Okay, let's start off at one, address the O-line aggressively. There's going to be tackle conversation here as well. I think that's fair. Giovanni Manu is going into a massive season next year. We'll have to just see what happens with it. But I think the interior offensive lines understood that this is going to be a massive key. It's really just O-line in general. I'll say interior offensive line, try to make it more specific. Mainly the reason I put that is because they talked a little bit today about, or yesterday, they talked about, are you going to move Tate to center? Is he going to do it in the last game? He's not going to do it in the last game, which is understandable. I think that would be unfair to him to like, hey, we're going to evaluate him. Let's throw him at center. If he's not getting reps there at all, it's probably going to look shaky. And we've already had enough communication errors up front. So I don't know that even makes sense. But I think moving him to center, if I had to say right now, it doesn't mean he has to, but I think that's still the right long-term move. I think he'd be very valuable at center. Maybe some of the issues would actually kind of diminish a bit from center. And I actually think his athleticism would pop at center. I think it's just the best spot for him. So I still think that's on the table. Problem is, there's not much for me to say with that outside of what he did at Georgia, because I just don't know what it would look like in the NFL. I don't know what it looked like in training camp. But I think one thing that is a benefit, and this is just to this point as well, and it's, one of the positive ways to look at what's going wrong this year, is that this offensive line as a whole, at very least, they did get a lot of snaps, and they've continued to see a lot of looks, be forced to see a lot of looks, guys that could potentially be the future. Miles, not a ton, so maybe a little bit more Miles this week, but in general, they were very involved in the game plan because Miles was involved. So they were forced to kind of figure problems out. And while we didn't solve them all, we were forced to do it, and it got better through the second half last week. It wasn't perfect, but it got better. You could see them fix issues. And again, this is a unit, because you could just, like, if Penei Sewell's messing blocks up, then it's not just individually, we just have to get better. We have to get better as a group. And the Lions were forced to do that throughout the entirety of the season. So at very least, for the most part, a lot of the guys, especially the young guys, Mahogany getting back to get a second game against Minnesota is very valuable for him. To do that with interchanging centers and communications all different all the time, I think that's valuable. Even the most healthy offensive lines don't typically stay together the entire season. You're usually going to lose somebody, and usually that player's going to be out for a majority of the game. Then at that point, or season at that point, you're going to be rotating outside of him too. So it was valuable from that. These guys did get meaningful snaps. It's not a good way to do it, but they did. That said, though, that position has to be aggressively addressed. And I do think, taking into account that I think Tate's going to go to center for us, because I think that fits him well. And either way, however you do it, Tate's going to be a part of the starting lineup going forward. I don't think that's going to change. But outside of those two, I don't think anybody's locked in a starting spot. I don't think Mahogany has. Obviously, Frazier hasn't. Glasgow's under contract. Don't even know if he's going to be here next year. I think everything's wide open outside of that. KO'd, I have no idea what the future is with her KO'd. So because of that, everything's wide open. Tristan Colon, everything's wide open. So you have to address that aggressively. Now, there's multiple ways to do it, which is valuable. You can do it in the draft. You can do it in free agency. We could do it through a trade. There's multiple ways to do it. It's not a super strong interior offensive line group as of now. Things will change, but it doesn't look incredibly strong on paper, especially if it's like, hey, we have to get a center. But there's potential flexible options. The early names that I'm keeping my eye on is my guy Isaac from Pittsburgh. He's banged up recently. Sayamala, I don't know how to say his name. The left guard, I think he's interesting. I don't know that you want to go break the bank for. I don't want to break the bank for a guy that's not known as great. Like if I'm breaking the bank for Linderbaum because he becomes available, so be it. But outside of that, I don't really want to do that. because I don't want to swing and miss, to be honest with you. But if there was a spot that we were going to take a swing and miss, I guess I'd rather prefer it be offensive line because at least we tried. But I think guys that fall into the Connor McGovern potential category, it sounds like he's going to be available this offseason. He's Buffalo's starting center. He's played guard in the past. You probably want him for center, so I don't know. And I also threw John Simpson in there. I've been a John Simpson guy going back to when he was going back to when he was Baltimore. Now he's at the Jets. But he also could step in at left guard for us. I thought maybe he'd be a target for us at the trade deadline. It wasn't. He has a lot of character is a big positive on his end. And he's been a part of, a multitude of different run schemes. I think he'd be interesting. Price point wouldn't be crazy. And I just think that right now, ideally on paper, if you could just structure it as we're going to get a veteran offensive lineman, someone that's proven to an extent that you actually believe as a starter in your heart, I think that's what you want to go get. You don't want to break the bank for that necessarily, but I think that's massive. And right now, I don't necessarily view Graham Glasgow as a starter going forward. Right. So Graham doesn't just fall into that category for me right now. I mean, it'd be great. It's you can say that he is because he was and he is right now, but I don't look at his level of play as a surefire starter. So I'm looking at this as almost a replacement for what Graham Glasgow was. And I think you have to be one of those. Tyler's going to be a free agent. I don't know if you want to go that route again, but you could. But I think something along those lines would be valuable to have someone that you feel like is a starter. Even if it's not great, just be good. Because at this point, and this is what the Lions always do, they always believe in the guys that they draft. Right? They draft him and they're going to give him an opportunity. So they gave the opportunity to Mahogany this year as the second year. Don't think he took it. But Tate Ratledge will continue to get opportunities. Miles Frazier, I don't think is completely out the door yet. And Manu's going to continue to get opportunities next year. So I think for that reason, you have to go get somebody that you feel can start. And then, of course, you can double back and go hit the draft again. And I don't think there's anything wrong with drafting another interior offensive lineman. It's not ideal to have young offensive linemen. I think you need experience. I think that's one thing this team lacks, which is consistent experience, which is why they have inconsistencies up front. Communications messy, bad snaps. Like they have those issues. Kingsley's developed well, positive for him there. They tried him at guard. Remember that? Probably won't do that. Maybe he's just a backup center. So I think with Kingsley development, he actually gives you more flexibility with Graham Glasgow. But you have to hit on somebody in free agency. You have to spend some legit money there for an interior lineman that you trust as a starter. Not a tackle, but someone that you trust as a starter for guard because that's just more reasonable financially. And then you're probably going to have to double back and hit the draft again. And you may be relying on another young guy, which is why it's beneficial that Tate Ratledge had to play with a whole bunch of different guys and why Frazier did the same thing, because at very least they're going to be young. But if you think about it, right, like Christian Mahogany didn't play many more snaps than Miles Frazier. Like Christian Mahogany's rookie season that was hyped, he didn't play that many more snaps than Miles Frazier, and Frazier barely played this season. He just played a couple of games at different guard positions. He didn't have that much experience, and obviously we saw this year, it was like, that wasn't great. So because of that reason, I think, you don't want to bet on the young guys, but at very least, a lot of these guys played a ton. That should be valuable. We'll see if it is. But that's the first thing, because if that's not addressed, the Lions aren't the Lions. The Lions can't be the Lions without that being better. There's just no path to it being better. Fourth downs, you don't trust them to run the football. Short yard situations, you don't trust them to run the football. Dave Montgomery has to be more involved. He's under contract. I don't think he's going anywhere. Then he better get better up front. Gibbs not having explosives, that's a result of the fact that, one, tight ends, receivers aren't blocking well either, which is why we're going to go get a new tight end coach, which we talked about. But also your O-line has to be better. Because if those guys aren't dynamic and you've invested in Monty, so you believed in him like that, and you should have, and you drafted a guy at freaking 12, then you have a problem up front. It's as clear as it gets. You got to get better there. So that's the first and foremost. If anything, make that better. If they just make that better, everything else will be better. But that's where it's going to start. Did Laporta have back surgery? I think he may have. I don't know. I think he did. Miles Frazier looks better than Mahogany. LSU bias aside. I mean, it's been rough for both of them, to be fair. I would like to see more Miles, but again, they'll have to make the decision. I mean, the thing that we know is you can't look at Miles Frazier as a starter. Now, that doesn't mean he can't get there, but I don't think there's any way that you can look at him as a starter. But again, the Lions will give him opportunities to the point where, say you drafted an interior offensive lineman, someone that was relatively high, maybe around 4 and higher, that guy could come in and just rotate with Miles Frazier. That could be on the table. And then maybe Mahogany and maybe Frazier, you're going to need your depth regardless. So at very least, you have that. You should have that. You should feel pretty good about it, that you replenished that element of it. Because, again, I don't think the Lions always have addressed that incredibly aggressively in the past in terms of offensive line depth and free agency. So hopefully they have that with the young guys. And they gave Manu a first crack at it too, so they'll have that to go off of. Would you prefer a guard that can play center or a center that can play guard? I prefer a guard that can play center. because I want to move Tate to center. That's how I'm looking at it. And that's the only thing I'm basing that on is I believe Tate Ratledge is a center. So I think that's what I would prefer for that reason. Either one's cool with me, but realistically, I think we'd have to get better at guard. Like, I just think we have to get better there. And right now, I don't think we have a lot of answers on our roster. Nothing. There's not a lot of answers on the roster I feel great about. So maybe you address that thing twice. All right, that's the first one. That one's pretty straightforward, though. I think we all expected that to be here. The next one, though, is the one that I think maybe the most overlooked, but to me, absolutely cannot be overlooked. Find a true slot corner. Like this one, we cannot overlook this offseason. Now, there's ways to do this. That doesn't mean it has to be go sign a slot corner. You could do this as simply as Brian Branch, you're becoming the nickel again. When teams, they go heavy personnel, 12 plus, hey, look, we'll put you back at safety. But outside of that, dude, you're the slot corner. Or go find one. Because right now, what makes the Lions to me, this is how I would explain the Lions to someone, especially defensively. What made the Lions great defensively when they were really tough in the secondary wasn't that they ever had the top players at corner. They may have at safety. They never had that corner. They had one of the better linebackers in coverage, but what they had is they had essentially everybody could cover almost anybody on the field. You had a ridiculous amount of versatility. You trusted that, and there wasn't a ton of weaknesses. That's when the Lions were at their best. They never had the best, so they could give support elsewhere because they trusted that everybody else could handle business. And right now, the Lions don't have that at slot at all. They tried it with Hamik a little bit. It was like, hey, he's going to become full-time. There was already, maybe some concerns there. That's not the answer. Okay, Rakestraw, that's a good one. Rakestraw can continue to compete for that role, but there's no way I'm going into this offseason thinking that's my slot corner. I just don't think you can, right? The last time we saw him in the preseason, obviously he's been hurt so much. Last time we saw him in the preseason, they went back to putting him at wide corner. So you can make it interesting, but you can't come into this offseason thinking we have our slot corner. I just don't think you can do that unless it's truly going to Brian Branch, which then, of course, means you have to go get a safety. But that's how I'm looking at it. You got to find that piece because right now we don't have that piece. We're just kind of putting people there. I don't think that's good enough. Not in today's NFL. Teams are just too deep. I mean, if you just go through who's in the playoffs, you're going to get a bad matchup all the time. Jalen Naylor is going to beat us up, right? You have the Packers. They have 1,000 receivers. Devontae Wicks will step in. You just don't have a matchup there. We need to have a matchup. We haven't really invested in that in a while. Last time we really put a big investment there, unfortunately, it didn't work from Seattle. But under the Dan Campbell era, it's been smaller investments. Like, hey, maybe, you kind of do a little bit of both. It's been early on, it was Brian Branch. And then it's been Chase Lucas. Like, it's Lucas. Like, we got to go get that guy. And this is the position outside of offensive line that I would be the second most aggressive for this offseason. Now, the positive to me is there's multiple ways to do this. One, again, Branch could do it. Number two, I think you can actually find this in the draft. And number three, you can also find it in free agency. Now, there's not a ton of options. But the one guy that I've been highlighting, because I liked him at the trade deadline too, is Jaquan McMillian. Now, we'll get to more of these names as we go forward, but Jaquan McMillian is one of those dudes. I would throw the offer at him. Now, they have a restricted free agency, so they'll tender him, I'm sure, and then you'll have to, go to that number as a team. Go to it, Lions. Like, make it happen. For me, Jaquan is a guy that I would try to go bring in, right? And you don't want to spend like $18 million there, but you have to figure that out. You absolutely have to figure that. You have to have a guy that you expect to be that position. It's a position now. Scouting teams, they have that position. I mean, most of them do. I don't know if the Lions do. Lions seem like they don't. They just kind of don't do slot corner. We have to address that. That's the second most important thing, I think, this offseason. When Branch was there was a unique skill set. We don't have a unique skill set at that position at all. That's a problem. I just don't think it's going to work as we go forward. Now, Mike Hillen. So Mike Hillen was interesting. I liked him before this upcoming season, when he was, coming from Cincinnati. And I don't think he played at all this upcoming season, which I'm not sure because of that reason. I'm not saying I'd count it out, but I did like him going into the year. Nothing really happened there. I think he got picked up by the Dolphins at one point as like a free through midseason. So I don't think he even played for them. I don't even know. I think he was like released immediately. I'm a little bit not sure on that one. Mainly, I think it was pretty heavy zone background, which was a big problem there. But ultimately, I just don't know. I kind of feel like he's in a weird spot. If he played this year, I'd feel better about it. But because he hasn't, I don't really know. But I'm not against it. I'm not against something like that. And that's fine. If you're going to go a cheaper route, fine by me. Make sure that cheaper route is exclusively looked at as a nickel corner. Don't look at it as like, oh, he's a wide corner, but he could do it. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. I just think that's such a crucial part missing of this team. And we have the safety play. We're not going to have the best cornerback play unless Terran emerges to that. So you have to win with strength in numbers, essentially. The Lions this year, they don't have that. As injuries have piled up, they don't have strength in numbers right now. They don't have a true slot corner. That's got to be addressed, got to be figured out. And it's such a big part of our run support as well. Address that aggressively. Don't overlook it. DJ Turner, potentially. He's not a free agent, so you'd have to go trade for him. I think this now is going to be his last year of his contract. That was another one during the trade deadline, but I would assume they're not going to move off him. So I would make offers in free agency. If it doesn't happen, cornerbacks, there's options in the draft. You could also get a safety that could play some of that. There's a couple this year, I think, that kind of fall into that category. But I think it's got to be very straightforward. You have to address that from a personnel side. The next one, I thought this was on the screen. My bad. The next one is tight end depth. Okay, we've talked about this too. Now, I also threw fullback in there. You should explore this. This might be too pricey, so maybe this one isn't realistic, but the one name that stuck with me early was Charlie Kohler. You are paying 2 tight ends, so you can't pay a lot of money to a third tight end. Understand, and you shouldn't. But you definitely need to get new names in there. And I think for the Lions, they should also look at it from the side of maybe we actually go after a fullback this offseason, especially depending on who the new OC is going to be, assuming they fire their current OC. If they'd make that change, and this guy's coming from a place that utilized a true fullback like teams do now in the NFL, go get one or make somebody that. Like Malcolm Rodriguez is a free agent. He tried it at one point. He was doing a little bit with Ben Johnson. Maybe go invest in a fullback, someone that you truly like. Hunter Lepke with the Cowboys. He's been really good. It might make sense to do that at this point because we kind of have guys that all kind of do the same thing. I kind of want a specialist there. And I think by the way that the Lions play, there's nothing wrong with investing in a specialist there. It's not going to be big money as a fullback, right? Kabinda, he wasn't the best pass catcher, but you knew what he was going to be. I think at this point, maybe stop dancing around it. Go get a dang fullback. Because that's just who the Lions are. And if that's what you're going to strive to get back to, which I think aggressively we're going to see this offseason, everything is going to be about how do we get back to running the football well. It might be time to go get a fullback on this roster. We've had one before. I think even a guy, again, go back to Baltimore. Patrick Ricard's going to be a free agent. The guy's 300 pounds. I mean, look, dude, go get him. Like last year, I think Kyle Juszczyk became a free agent and we didn't jump on it. And I feel like that was a massive missed opportunity. That guy's used for everything in that offense. He'd be so valuable right now. So, again, you don't want to spend a ton there, but just ultimately, it might be time to go get a fullback and get some new bodies as tight end 3. I'm cool with having Firsker back. I'd bring him back, making the minimum. But at this point, I'm more focused on the blocking ability than anything from any of these tight ends. Anybody at Baltimore is going to be pretty good at that. That's kind of more of my emphasis. I want the pass catching upside, but I feel like the only way you're probably reasonably going to get that without financially spending good money is you're going to have to hit that in the draft. Because free agency wise, you can't spend big money on a tight end 3. So Forsker's fine for competition, but you can't spend big money on a tight end 3. So it's probably going to have to come to the draft if they have realistic pass catching upside. But at this point, the Lions have always brought in kind of just different guys to block. We got to find another tight end that we trust as a true blocker at this point. Yeah, I would keep Firsker, like I said, but to me, he's not there. None of these guys, Firsker, Zylstra, I don't trust any of them as my third blocker as of now. None of them. To me, none of them are in that spot. Get some new names. Let's restart. Do we re-sign Al-Quadin Muhammad? I would re-sign Al-Quadin Muhammad, assuming that he's going to be a cheap. I don't think he's going to be that expensive this offseason. Could be wrong on that, though. Edge is always all over the place. He's also not the young. I think he's over 30 years old at this point. I don't think he'd be very expensive, and I wouldn't pay big money for Al-Quadin Muhammad, to be honest with you. I'd pay maybe a few $1 million a year, something along those lines, like 4 max probably, like top of my head. But anything other, if he's like getting like a legitimate big deal, like, okay, just let him walk. But assuming that it's on the cheaper end, which I think it's going to be, in that case, I would re-sign Al-Quadin Muhammad. And to flip that around, a guy like Josh Pascal right now, I'm letting him walk. Marcus Davenport probably lean towards letting him walk. Now, Ahmed Hassanin, get the deal done, lock him in for next year. I think he's probably going to have one of those like weird kind of option things where you can kind of just bring him back for the futures deal. I think he should be brought back because the one thing that I'm always emphasizing there outside of making a big draft pick is the fact that the first focus has to be that we have to be better against the run at defensive end. And that's the first thing you have to bring. And the positive is Hassanin will bring that. Because I have him and I can lock him back in, Al-Quadin Muhammad is possible. Something like that does make sense at that point. Now, that brings me to number 4. And number 4 is exactly what we talked about yesterday, which is invest in the run game, coaching, and a trust. Now, here's the big thing to the trust. Here's the big thing to this. They're probably going to go get a new OC. I don't know what that's going to mean for everybody else. I'm not going to speculate, but I will look at it from this perspective. I don't think it's insane to think that a Shaw or a Morton or something like that stuck around, and I don't think it'd be crazy for them too. I have no issue with them doing it. You guys know I felt pretty good about a lot of our past concepts. But, and because of, what he seems to like to do, I mean, he's not going to go get an OC job in the NFL. The only thing he might be able to grab something at a small college, right? So for that reason, I would look at it as I'm not completely out on these guys. Obviously, that next OC would make the big call on it. But realistically, I don't think there's a great chance that those guys are coming back as DOC. And the main reason is Dan Campbell took over the play calling. And I think the biggest thing that they have to go after is, number one, invest in someone that understands the run game. Like, absolutely, that's his thing. Slash, and this could be the same guy, someone that Dan Campbell will trust for timing of play calling. And that may take more experience. That might not be able to be the young guy that hasn't done it before. You might not be able to go get the run game coordinator and be like, hey, you're the OC. Maybe you can, but you might be taking a little bit of a swing with that this, again, could be the end scenario of, oh, man, well, it wasn't great with timing. Dan has to call plays again. If there's one thing that stands out to me, and I don't know what to attribute this to because it was on all three levels, but it just felt like in the Lions penalties, they were 14th in the league. They were 12th last year, so it wasn't a huge gap. But, dude, the amount of mental errors that were constant, and again, I understand a lot of it was young guys. It just felt unreasonable this year. And, again, I think it's because we had a smaller we couldn't make as many mistakes as we could in the past because our O-line was just better. But that said, if there's anything, you got to get Dan Campbell to being back to not having to deal with that and feeling like he's spreading himself a little bit thin. It's just not going to work, and that's clear to me after the season. So you need someone that he will trust for at very least the timing. That could be a old dude calling plays, to be honest with you. I don't know who in the world that would be, but they need to have that. And maybe that's David Shaw gets promoted. I doubt it, but, you know, like David Shaw's been there. He's done that. So I don't know. Regardless of who it is, that has to happen. Now, I'm going to give you a new name. I want to give you a guy that we have not talked about. I should have pulled up a picture of him or something, but I do want to give you a new name. And this is one that I found today. There's going to be a lot of these as we go through, but this one I think is interesting. All right, let me pull it up. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so as always, this is going to be a mess. Dump Hank up. Okay, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's good or bad, but you're going to have to explain yourself on that. All right, let me get an image here so I'm not just talking about a guy that you guys never seen before. Now you're going to see a picture of him, and it's like, all right, now I see what you're talking about. All right, I see him wearing a shirt and stuff. Now I got it. Hold up. Let me pull it up on the screen. All right, this is an option. And actually, this one, the more and more I looked into it, he's young. So, again, this could be a little bit difficult because of that reason. The more I looked into it, the more I thought it was interesting. Let's pop it up. Boom. Oh, this is weird. I didn't expect it to do that. Wait, hold up. Is this really the way we're going to? All right, whatever. You got the Vikings thing in the background. This is my man, G.J. Kinney or Keen or Kine. I don't know. That guy, okay? That guy for Texas State, currently their head coach, is an interesting option. And I think the reason being is because experience. He was an NFL player. He was an offensive assistant in the NFL, beginning with the Philadelphia Eagles, where he played first in the NFL. Then you get him at the collegiate level, and he has had one of the most dominant offenses constantly since he's taken over. He's only been successful. Now, he's been at smaller schools, Texas State most recently. He was at Incarnate Word before that for a season. Let me actually pull up where he was. I wrote a lot of this down. But and here's one of the most interesting things I found out about this that really caught my eye. He was with Sonny Dykes in 2017, and he became the interim offensive coordinator for their bowl game. I believe it was against SMU. And why I found that so interesting is because Sonny Dykes took over for the old head coach, who ultimately this guy ended up following to his next spot. But Sonny Dykes took over, and obviously Sonny Dykes runs a much different offense on an air raid style. But because it was the last game, it was the bowl game, he allowed our guy here to call the plays for that game. And I think that was important, right? Obviously, the only reason Sonny Dykes matters name-wise is because that was Jared Goff's guy back at Cal. So I just thought that was interesting. It's a nice little connection. It always ties back to something. There's always some weird connection there. But he was with Hawaii as an offensive coordinator to get things started in 2020. Then he was with UCF. And again, most recently being with Incarnate Word in Texas State. Both those offenses ridiculous. Some of these stats are insane. When he was with Incarnate Word, what was it? His first season, I believe they went 12-2. Or actually, no. First season, they went 12-2. They scored 51.5 points per game, 325 yards per game rushing, which is just insane. Doesn't even sound like a real number. 5.6 yards per carry. Of course, that's an FCS team, but they did make the semifinals that year. And again, very quickly, Texas State picked him up. Year two being with Texas State, they signed him to a 7-year extension. His offense continued to be dominant, like historic, 36 to 37 points per game all 3 years. He's been the head coach there. Now, again, he's had the offense coordinator, been a co-offense coordinator. So, that's going to be in his background. But now he's the head coach. They score a ton. They run for a ton of yards. And I think the biggest reason this makes sense, too, is because stylistically, he's coming from a background, a coaching tree that leans into the rushing element. Now, of course, there's more power scheme to this. I think the versatility of gap scheme versus just being a heavy wide zone team fits the Lions better. I think that flexibility matters. But the coach that he worked under, I can't think of what his name was. Gus Malzahn, is that what his name was? Gus Malzahn. He's now an offensive coordinator. I think he's right now currently at Florida State. He is a very run-heavy guy. Now, they do it a lot of the shotgun, and they try to get a lot of plays, kind of makes you think of like the whole Chip Kelly thing where it's like, let's get 1,000 plays in. But ultimately, like, that's still who he is at his core. Something like that, I think, is an interesting name that could make some sense for the Lions, where the biggest thing, and I think this is the most clear thing on a coaching staff, you could argue that the Lions overlooked probably this offseason, was adding somebody that is going to fit what Dan Campbell looks for from a rush game perspective. That's not to say the Lions didn't run the ball enough this year, because they did, and there seemed to not be a problem with that until I guess there was a problem with that when he stepped down and obviously Dan took over play calling. I don't think it was necessarily just an issue for not running the ball enough. He just wanted to change up the timing. If you remember, afterward, John Moore had talked about timing of when he's calling plays. He wants to get that feel of what Dan Campbell's looking for. So you need somebody that's going to come in, to me, that is either potentially going into year 2 here. I mean, it could be someone going into year 2 just because they've been under it. It still could be a guy, I mean, like John Moore, and I doubt it. But if it's not going to be that, it's got to be a guy that Dan Campbell has the trust in, that he can feel like he can step away from it and be like, hey, dude, I'm not going to have issues with a lot of the timing of this, and I'm going to trust you're going to have it right. And I think it's going to be challenging, but I think that means you have to get a guy that fits. You can't just get a guy that's good offensively or that's been a part of an offense that scores a ton of points. You have to get a guy that philosophy-wise fits what Dan Campbell wants to be, even if it looks a little bit different at his level. Because if you don't have that, then I think you're going to fall into potentially the same issue once again. So it's got to be someone that, to me, Dan Campbell would trust from a timing perspective. And again, the run game background is something that I would really emphasize with the next guy, because I think there's very clear evidence the Lions may have just overlooked that this offseason. Right? Brought Morton in. He's a big pass game guy. They had questions about how much he would throw the ball. I don't think that was at all an issue this year. I think he clearly wanted to get involved. He really leaned into Jahmyr Gibbs. So I don't think that was a problem. I just think realistically we didn't run the ball well enough. We talked about this yesterday, right? From hitting landmarks. So a lot of it was up front, but the flow between run game and pass game never felt like it was there. It felt like, man, we got smart pass game concepts. Run game, a little bit dull at times, but we're doing all of the things that we would do in the past from a schematic standpoint, like a lot of the variety. It was all still there. We were still a very versatile rushing scheme, but it never felt incredibly intertwined with the pass game. And you want a guy that's going to be heavy play action, which, of course, this offense or this head coach is, and that's why I bring him up. He's very heavy within the play action side of things. So it needs to mesh better together, and it didn't feel like it meshed incredibly well this season. And again, it could be more veteran experience, but realistically, they need a guy like that. What's the probability of Von Moore sticking around? I wouldn't have gone, but fired after first year feels rare. I think it's very real, but I think the problem is, and again, I don't have any like massive, like, oh, we got to get, I don't think that's a huge thing. I think the realistic part of this is you asked him to be an offensive coordinator. He's done it for 1 year. And I think realistically it was probably overlooked that with Dan Campbell, you have to have a guy that clearly has the same mindset from a timing perspective as Dan Campbell, because this is the same thing that happened with Ben Johnson. It's the same thing that happened with Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn's doing his thing. He's been with Washington for years. They have an elite rushing attack. They're incredibly versatile. So you had those things, but he took over the play calling. When Anthony Lynn lost play calling, I was one of the people that did not have an issue with Anthony Lynn's play calling. I didn't have an issue with it. I mean, I understand we were just kind of throwing, but like, and look, I'm not saying it didn't work out, because it did. Ben Johnson took over and it worked out really well, but I didn't have an issue at the time with Anthony Lynn. I just thought, man, we're super limited up front. But I think the same thing came into play once again, is he has to be well connected with what Dan Campbell and how Dan Campbell sees the game. And I think that's the biggest problem. You may have had smart people. You may have had people that schematically kind of understand what you're looking for, that understood what Goff was looking for in the passing attack this year. And I think concept-wise, we saw a lot of that. We got ourselves out a lot of terrible situations. This is not a team that feasted on, hey, man, we're just 2nd down and 4, play action, everything's open. We feasted on that against Washington, all right? We torched Washington on that. They had absolutely no answer for it because they couldn't have an answer for it. This year, we were forced to get out of that. We were forced to not be that team and still find ways to pass the football. And we did. I thought Goff at one point was having the best season of his career. That said, though, I think it's going to come back to, and this is where the offense coordinator role could be challenging, But and it could leave the door open for someone getting a second-year opportunity, like you're pointing out, because now maybe they have a better sense for it, like John Morton did. But I also don't think the season ended well enough. I think that's the problem. Say the Lions went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. Now all of a sudden, I think there's a real possibility that a guy like that sticks around, because you're looking at it as, okay, year 2, Dan might now give him those reins. They feel like they're well connected in terms of what everybody's looking for. Now he may feel comfortable with him calling plays and truly be able to step back. But I think the problem is, because the season ended like it did, and really, I mean, it ended against Minnesota scoring 10.6 turnovers. Not even to say it's on them, but because that happened, alongside the fact that run game really never came together, I think because of that reason, it's going to be hard to see a world in which Dan doesn't make a change there. But it's going to be a challenge. And this is why I don't think it's going to be the big name. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, everybody kind of expect that. It has to be the guy that sees the game like Dan Campbell, and that probably has some experience with play calling. And again, I think very simply, you could look at it as, hey, man, he's got a heavy run game background. If we keep a guy like Shaw around or something like that, like our pass game coordinator, we might be in a pretty good spot. And if Morton wants to stick around, we might be in a pretty good spot because we got those two things. We are still missing that link with Dan Campbell. At that point, it'd be like, well, Dan, just call plays again if this is how you want to do it. And I don't think that's good, because it just felt like there was way too many instances of little things not being polished, not being detailed. And maybe that wasn't because Dan was calling plays, but it definitely could have been. So for that reason, to get him out of that spot, you need someone that can bring those two things together. And I think that's going to be the biggest key heading into this year. So it's disappointing, right? And I don't have a great answer, to be honest with you. They got to look at everything. And there was a report today that said the Lions will leave no stone unturned. They have to look at every single option. Old, young, called plays, hasn't called plays. I mean, they have to look everywhere for this guy. Because it doesn't have to be the big name. It doesn't have to be the most successful. It just has to be a guy that sees the game like Dan Campbell. Because I think assistant-wise, you have a very strong staff. The Lions have constantly had that. That's another thing that I thought was interesting about this option with G.J. Kinney or Kine, is that when he first got to, I believe it was Texas State, they immediately had their best recruiting class of all time. There was a lot of buzz around him getting there. And coaching staff-wise, he's constantly been given a ton of credit for the staffs that he's put together. He's also been a finalist for Coach of the Year multiple times. Like, this guy's got a lot of love, and I think that's going to be important as well. So I don't know. And if that's the thing with Brian Daboll, right? Like, I like Brian Daboll. It would be his offense, so you would understand that Dan could take that step back. He shouldn't have any kind of urge to take it away from him unless it doesn't go well. But at that point, you're also probably getting a remade assisting staff, and that could be a challenge. It's not to say you can't do it, but that's probably what that would turn into. Someone of that pedigree, he's going to restore that to his own. And I don't think it necessarily has to be that. I don't think it has to be this insane overhaul of like, no, we're just not this team anymore. Like, you have to still be what I think ultimately the only way this works, and it's the same way on offense and defense with Dan, it still has to look like a Dan Campbell team. And I think in a lot of ways, we still look like a Dan Campbell team this year. I just think we weren't as detailed. We weren't as good up front. And obviously timing was an issue, and that's the reason they made the change. It's really the same thing defensively. I think it looks a lot like the Lions that I know. And even when they started tweaking things, it was like, oh, the Lions have done this stuff before. The only thing is they're just doing it at a higher usage rate, right? They're going very heavy zone. They're going heavy zone on third down. Like, they're changing it up in terms of how much they use these tendency-wise, but they did that with Glenn. I mean, at one point, Glenn was like the most aggressive defensive play caller in football, and then he pulled way back for another season. So we've seen a lot of what it looked like. The way that the defense played looked like a Lions defense. And I think for that reason, which is the final point number 5, make a decision on defense, I don't think that Kelvin Shepard's going to get fired. I think Kelvin Shepard will stay the defensive coordinator, and I'm fine with that being the case. Could they look at every direction? I think you could, but I don't think it's necessary. At this point right now, before I've really broken into it, you have to make a decision, right? What was the issue defensively? What do you believe the issue was defensively, Dan? Was it personnel? Was it the guy that's calling the plays, the timing of it? What was it? I don't think it's going to be looked at as Kelvin Shepard. I think the fact that he was willing to adjust, and the Lions felt like they were very understandable of why they had to adjust, which is the same reason they adjusted offensively and they became a pass-first team by the final game against Minnesota, which was unfortunately the worst game to become that team. You don't want to be a pass-first team against Minnesota. I mean, if that happens against Chicago, we might be okay. Against Minnesota, that's not okay. But I think that the fact that they made the tweaks that they did this year, it felt very Dan Campbell involved. Like, we don't want to do this, but this is kind of what we have to be this year, and they did it. For that reason, I think Kelvin will stick around, and I think they're going to be fine with doing that, and I'm going to be fine with that okay as well. For the reason Henry was run out of town, I still believe Hooker would have been great with a game plan for Hooker. You think Henry was run out because of Goff? Okay, I don't think that's the case personally, mainly just because I think Hendon Hooker was pretty bad in the preseason. But that said, there were some positives in there. I just think he had a really rough preseason. But I do agree with your first point that this is Goff's team, which is even more so why I think it could be difficult to see the big name get hired. You know what I'm saying? Like, it might be difficult for the big name to get hired and take this thing as his own. It could be difficult. Dan's going to have a lot of respect for that guy. I'll say that. Conflict of styles, that's fair. I think that is fair, that they were very different stylistically. Well, they could have been different stylistically. I mean, Hendon Hooker was a pocket guy in college. He just played in a very unique offense that looks nothing like what NFL teams do, right? Because of the splits and the hash mark differences. He played a way different style, but he was a pocket, passer in that sense. He just could run. He had that athleticism. So it's very possible that at a better spot, there's a better place for him. I think that's very on the table. But that said, I don't think he earned a spot this year, to be honest with you, but I think that's very possible. Ran 119 times less last year. That isn't that they couldn't get the run game going. I disagree. They couldn't get the run game going. There's no way you can convince me that they could get the run game going. I completely disagree, to be honest with you. Now, there's cases I think you could be made where they should have run it more, but to be honest with you, I think a huge part is the most recent weeks. I mean, I'd have to look at some of the rushing attempts, but in the last, like I said, 6-7 games, we've become a team that's a pass first team. And I think we've had to become that team to give ourselves a chance. I don't think we gave ourselves a chance not being that team. I think we were able to be that run first team. And there's games you can look at, Giants, Washington, Chicago. You're talking about teams that can't stop the run at all. Like, they don't have the dudes. I mean, we're not great up front. They don't have the dudes at all. And especially once injuries start to pile up, I just don't think we could play as that team. I don't think that team would have given the Lions a chance here down the stretch, because I don't think they would have stayed in games, to be completely honest with you. And they would have constantly and I think the Minnesota was the most unfortunate example of this, because Minnesota was a game where you had to be run first. I think they wanted to be run first. They tried to be run first, and they were run first, and it worked because Minnesota is not great there. Minnesota up front is not great against the run. Ever since Harrison Phil's been gone, they've been questionable. The week before, all the Giants did was run the ball. They threw the ball like 5 times. All they did was run it. So the game plan against Minnesota uniquely, I think, was run first. I think that was the right way to approach it. And I think it was doing enough. But the fact that it had no explosives, that every run was 3 to 4 yards, was just doing enough. It wasn't enough, but it was doing enough for that game specifically. And I think it would have been enough, to be honest with you, if we wouldn't have turned the ball over 6 times. I mean, if we're not fumbling and, we can't pick up a 4th and 1 because of a false start multiple times, a Goff interception second half, like if those things aren't there, I think that would have been enough to win a really ugly football game. But I think for who the Lions want to be, I don't think they have the people to do it right now. And I don't think under Dan Campbell, honestly, it's ever going to really change. I think it can change from a week-to-week basis because, again, I always bring up this example. We played Tampa Bay with Ben Johnson all the time. We were a passing team, and that was still under Dan Campbell. And it wasn't to me like, oh, he's going rogue, man. He's doing his own thing. It was, nope, that's the team that we're playing. So I think there's still a uniqueness to who you play, and there always has to be that. But ultimately, for consistency, the way that Dan views everything is you have to be a run-first team, and I just don't think they could do it this year. They could not lean into it this year. Yeah, there was no consistency whatsoever. And I think it does come back to the ability to run the ball, to have that consistency. That's where I think it comes back to, right? You have to run the ball because that's just who the Lions are. You have to have that element to your game to be that. Now, it is one criticism I do have, and I had it at times with the Lions passing attack, because I felt at times there was too much vertically going on. But I also don't think play action was a huge impact because they couldn't run the ball like they typically can. And I do think, again, when the Lions became we're just going to throw the football, that consistency comes back. But I think also when you're not as good up front too, you're just leaving yourself up to much more. I would have liked to use Montgomery more as well. I would have liked to use more as well. But that doesn't take away the fact that for weeks he wasn't impactful at all when he was getting the ball. He started to come on late. I don't think we ever used him enough this year. That part I would have done too. But if anything, the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs is not popping runs is it's not okay. Like, that's why he's here. Monty should have been more involved. For weeks, I was saying he needs to be more involved. I'd give the ball to Monty. And weeks, I'd criticize Gibbs. You leaving yards on the table. We just need to go forward. We don't need big runs because we can't do anything in the run game. Just go forward. At least Monty's going to push us forward. That's where I was at for a long time. And I think there was some truth to that, and I think they should have leaned into it more at times, especially the game he went like 6 for 60. But ultimately, the fact that the flip side is you're not even getting the big runs out of Gibbs, is the biggest travesty, and it tells you where you were up front. The Lions just weren't even close to being good enough. Not even close this year. And they're going to address that, and they will. They're going to be aggressive to address that. Not so Mahogany. Me neither. He's not. You can't look at him as a starter next year. He can earn it, but he can't look at him going into this offseason. Now, having a lot of confidence going next year, fourth place schedule. This is true. Now, we'll have the fourth place schedule, but those are only for like 2 games, right? Like you'll still play the same 2 divisions plus maybe now it's 3 games. So we'll have 3 games of fourth place. So that could open up a little bit. A few tweaks in coaching. I'm with you. I think foundationally there's not big panic. They have a lot of guys in their contract that they're going to rely upon, and I think that's fine. So I don't think there's panic foundationally. But they have to get back to being the foundation at its most simple sense. They have to get back to their foundation being something that they can lean into. Now, that said, we put together this little mock draft. I just did it for fun right before I started this because I'm like, I'll just do this. We're doing all the draft content on Dose of Draft. Check that out if you haven't. That's where all the draft content goes. It will continue to go there. It's continuing to ramp up too. It will continue to ramp up as the season officially ends this weekend, and we get into the offseason. Like, it's really going to be a lot over there. We'll do some Lion-specific things over here, but everything just draft-related will be over there. So with that, let's go to – and obviously free agency stuff will be here too. I want to go to this, like, little mock I put together. And I don't know. This is going to change a ton, of course, but I just think this is interesting. It kind of fits in with the 5 names that we talked about of how the Lions could think about doing things. I don't know why this background hold up. Let me get rid of this background. I don't like this. I don't like seeing this Vikings game, man. I should have got rid of that. Let me get something that's not. There we go. I like that. There we go. All right. Here we go. Early mock. Vega Ione. I love Vega Ione. I think he's a day 1 starter in the NFL. You could plug him in immediately. I think athletically, he kind of fits into what the Lions love, which is guys that do everything offensively. So that would be the first pick in this mock draft. You might be able to move around the board, maybe not. I think that the interior offensive line, there could be a couple that go early, but I think it's mainly going to be guys that are probably playing a bit out of position, but incredibly powerful. That fits into what the Lions do. I think his body control is going to be the biggest separator versus what we've drafted the last few years, Mahogany and Tate. He's going to be much more under control than what we've had of those guys. His pass protection is in a great spot to this point as well. An aware player, finishing, tough, sustainability. He's really strong across the board. There's not a lot of weaknesses I have. I don't think he's the most rangy player, but there's not a lot of weaknesses across the board. So Vega Ione is someone that I could absolutely see the Lions fall in love with. He could be one of those guys at the Lions draft where everybody's like, oh my gosh, they reached on this guy. But the Lions just loved him. And they're like, no, we actually had him number 7 on the board. Like, this will be something like that. This will be something like that. It's like, man, he's actually number 7 on our board. It's like, oh, snap, Lion. All right, we've done that. And this is what that would be. Now, Gabe, I liked him a lot earlier. I think I've fallen off a bit on him, but I think stylistically this would make a lot of sense. Early when I watched Gabe, I thought, I was like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Big, physical. I was going to play the run, strong in the lower body. I don't love his pass rush, so I think I'm a little bit shaky on this one completely at this point, but I think the style would make sense. And this is the one way that you can really invest in pass rush plus run defense. I think is probably going to have to come through the draft. So if you were able to make that move, and then to add it off with Pons, which I really like getting Pons, D'Angelo Pons. I think Pons, 5'9", like 175 pounds. I think he would actually probably go to the nickel corner. He played in a very heavy zone system in Indiana, one of the heaviest in football, and he did a lot of off coverage work. But I think at press man, he was a plus player. I just love how athletically he is. Like reactive athlete, absolutely translate the slot. He plays the game incredibly fast. There's toughness, there's twitch, there's a closing ability. He's a smart player with so much zone that he's been put in. I think he'd do really well kind of living into kind of that level two world, and you would be able to just kind of plug him in and put him in that nickel role. And he'd have the flexibility to go outside, but I view him as a slot cornerback in this case. So this is just an idea. I think it would obviously connect with a lot of things that we talked about today, specifically the first and the third pick. You could potentially get your answer at slot, which would be great. More flexibility with the injuries that you've constantly had there. And then obviously you're getting a day one starter next to Tate Ratledge. And then if you go sign a veteran in free agency, you could feel way better about the offensive line. Plus, you would then throw into that, now, okay, now I'm not relying on Mahogany. Right now there's a competition there. Maybe Frazier or Mahogany and Ione go at it, and we see what happens. You know, and if Frazier's competing with a veteran, like that's all of a sudden where we're at. And the guys that aren't playing, that's your depth. And you feel better about the depth because you're kind of just restarting in terms of your depth. So I think this would be a really fun way to kind of go about it, is something along these lines. If he's 7 on Brad's board, that means he sucks. No, that's not true. That's not true. They love Jack Campbell. They jumped on him. That was great. That worked out really well. Oh, no, you know what? You're right. I'm taking that back. You're right. Didn't they have Terry on like 3? Hold up. You're right. No, you're right. I misinterpreted what you're saying. He would probably have to be 3. Okay, you're probably right. And he might be. I don't know. I mean, bro, Lions be loving dudes. Jahmyr Gibbs, hey, bro, that dude was definitely top 5 on their board. Definitely. I do got to say, though, Bijan's crazy. Hey, Bijan's crazy. All right, this is a little side note. Oh, my gosh, dude. That dude is ridiculous. But Gibbs unique. And this year, a little bit of last year, finally we've kind of like leaned into this guy's an awesome receiving back. Let's do that a lot. He's awesome there. And, man, he's so dynamic, and it helps us a lot in a lot of 2-minute situations. So you have that going for you, which is great. I was going to say something else. Oh, Isaac Tesla. Something about Isaac Tesla. Yes. Feels like we unlocked a little bit of Isaac towards the end of the year. Hopefully he has a good game against Chicago. But there's a real role for him. There's a vision there. People were saying Tesla could be our Puka. Maybe. Shoot. I mean, definitely not year 1, but maybe year 2. I don't know. He fits. We found a role for him. He is unique. He works. We found a way to make it work. I would go after Linderbaum too. I would have no issue with spending big money there. I think, well, one, the problem is it's expensive. But number 2, I don't think the Ravens are going to let him become a free agent. Could be wrong. But if I'm the Ravens, I don't know why I would let that happen. Just like from their perspective, like, they didn't become a free agent. Like, how many great centers are there? Like, we're not letting that guy become available. That dude is here for life. That's would be my assumption. Is there's no way this guy becomes a free agent. I mean, that's how I would approach it. I think a lot of teams think about it like that too. Sendo tackle and guard. So Decker's going to be the starter next year, right? I don't think that's going to change. Sewell's going to be the starter. The problem, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a lot of options. Is having Manu. He's going to get an opportunity again next year to be the backup tackle. There's no doubt. Center to me is Tate Ratledge. He will be a starter somewhere on this offensive line next year. There's no doubt. There's just no doubt. He's going to be a starter somewhere. I think he's going to go to center. That's how I would do it. And in this case, obviously, that's kind of filling one of those guard spots. To me, guard is hands down the biggest need, or center if they don't want to move Tate. I think you move Tate because I think Tate's better as a center. I think his skill set screams center. I don't think it screams guard. I think his skills screams center. But his toughness this year was on display. He did improve this season. Wasn't great, but he did improve. And he fits what the Lions want to do stylistically. He's not going to, I think, come off the field for the Lions at any point going forward. So you have 2 clear openings and potential future openings at tackle. Those are definitely in play. It's tough to do that. Like if you were going to use a first-round pick on a guy that you don't feel great about playing guard and then just make him the backup tackle, that's going to be a tough sell, especially in the mid, unless you move like way back to the back end of the first round. That's going to be a tough sell. And I think it's going to be a tough sell to Brad because it's going to be like, well, shoot, man, it's not a great interior offensive line class in the free agency anyways. And we just drafted a guy that we don't feel great about playing guard. Like you don't want to just assume tackle to guard is there you go. You have to feel good about that. So there's a world to do it. But if you don't feel good about that, I think it'd be a hard sell to get somebody that can't start at center. Like someone's got to be able to start on this O-line. And a first-round pick for the Lions, constantly a first-round pick for the Lions is a starter. Have we had a first-round pick that hasn't started? Terrion started. Jack started. Gibbs started. I guess technically Gibbs started with Jamal. Or wait, no, that was with Monty at that point. Sewell started. I'm forgetting somebody. Hutch started. J-Mo started. Well, no, J-Mo didn't start. He was hurt though. J-Mo would be the one because he was coming off that injury. He would be the only guy I think that would fall into that. Miles Frazier is still not that guy. Miles Frazier could be that guy. I can't go off at 30 snaps, 20 snaps. The Lions will give him a chance, but you can't. I don't think it's what is it, malpractice to go into this offseason thinking like, oh, he's the guy. Like, nah, you have to look at it as we need a starter, and he's going to get his chance because someone's going to get hurt. It just is what it is. But Miles has been banged up too. So you throw that on top of it. Offensive lineman, what do they need? Bro, they got to be available. He wasn't available this year constantly, and that's something they have to address. But he's going to see the field next year in some way because somebody's going to get hurt. At some point, he's going to have to play. Manu will see the field at some point next year. You know what I mean? Like it's just gonna happen. These guys will get out there. They'll have to play. Hopefully not. You always hope not, but they're going to have to. So he can still be your guy and also not be the guy, though. You know what I mean? He's our guy, but he's just the backup guy. That's what he is. That's fine with me. Shoot, I'll take some good backup old linemen. Great. That's what I'm saying. Well, the center thing for Tate is different, though. And here's why I think it's different. One, I think he's better as a center. So it is projection based, but it's the same idea of what it would be coming out of the draft, right? Like if you didn't have Graham, you probably would have had to make him your center. Like if you had Zeitler and not Graham last year, he would have been your center. He would have had to be your center because he would have started, I think. So I think it's a little bit different from that. And I also think that decision can be made outside of him starting games. I don't think he needs to start because he's going to be a starter. I don't think he needs to start games in regular season at center for the Lions to make that decision. I don't think they need him to, which is cool. Because that's why I pay my coaches, right? Like that's why I pay Dan Campbell and Hank Fraley to make those decisions. You don't need to see him start. If you need to see him start, we got a problem. You should be able to make decisions like that. That's why Brad Holmes is here, and that's why they thought and that's just where I'm at. So I could be wrong. It could go atrocious at center. They may not even try it. They may not. But I do think with just where it's at right now, I think it's important the Lions figure that out. I think with having taken all those snaps, getting that year to learn, I'd also probably prefer him over a rookie center, to be honest with you. I think it'd be very valuable for him going in year 2. I just think that's what he is. It's not me forcing him to a spot because it's like, oh, we need one. I just think he's better there. I think he's just better there. I think that's what he's going to do well. So I don't know. We'll see though. That's just based on me. Frazier is a guard. That's what he is. Someone say he's not a guard? I think we all know he's a guard, right? I don't know. Maybe I missed something. And that's what that head coach would do. He'd do a lot of play action. Their quote from his coaching tree from Gus Malzahn is, you run the ball downhill to help your pass protection, make your pass protection better. That's why I have him on this, okay? I think he'd be an interesting option. Let me see. Did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. Tate is a guard. I don't think Tate's a guard. I think Tate's a center. Tate's playing guard. I think he's a center. Restructure Goff and Saint, spend a little on at least one proven guard. Yeah, it's something that's probably going to have to come up here. They may have to start considering doing something like that. I think they're going to move off a couple. I think Graham will get cut. They may have to restructure a couple guys, and we'll see. They may have to. He may not. I mean, and I would get it from Tate, especially as a rookie, like not wanting to play center too, because it's like, well, shoot, this is a lot. Like I would get it. Like I would understand that that's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility for a young dude that's never really done it. But I'm paying you millions of dollars, buddy. Playing center. I don't know. I'm going to tell you. That's the coach's job, right? The coach's job is to put you in a position to be successful. The player is not your job to tell me what position to be successful. If I'm a good coach, I think you're going to be best here. Let's work it, bro. Because for you, this is going to work. Trust me, this is where you will thrive. Believe me, man. This is why I'm here, okay? You believe me, right? Yeah, okay. You're playing center. All right. That's why you're here, bro. You know what I mean? It's all right. Sometimes you got to get a little uncomfortable. Anything wrong quarterbacks? Not right now, to be honest with you. I haven't really looked into a lot of late round quarterbacks. I looked at a lot of the early ones just for the draft channel. Not a lot of the late ones, though. I'm actually going to see, though, who is even in the draft late for quarterback. I don't know. I mean, a lot of familiar names. I don't know if I like any of them, though. Probably my guy from Iowa, Gronkowski, because Gronkowski. That guy is a dog on the video game. I would get that guy. That guy's tough. Castellanos is coming out this year. That's cool. That's cool. Carson Beck. I've always been a Carson Beck guy. I don't think the Lions will be, though. I've always been a Carson Beck guy. I don't think the Lions will be. Pavia's coming out. Get a little Russian action there. There's some dudes. Frank did play guard, and he did. Very similar measurables, too. We did the thing on him. We did. We'll see. I don't think it's that serious. I don't think we should get all up in arms. I think we need to chill. It's not really that serious. He's going to be a starter regardless, right? I just think, and here's the thing to me. The only reason I say this is because, and this is what you have to do from the scouting perspective, because otherwise you would have to play the guy at every, like Brian Branch would have never became a safety, right? Like if you can't find a player, and again, it's kind of the same mentality. When you look at a player, you grade skill set, right? You grade traits, you grade positional factors. And when you're doing that, you have grades that fit by position. So when your grades fit better for a certain position from a scouting perspective, you need to put that guy in a position that you believe that he's going to be best in. You don't scout a guy that plays, like, for example, You wouldn't scout a player like Micah if you're doing it right and say, man, this guy is an amazing pass rusher, but he's a linebacker, so I got to scout him as linebacker. Like, no, you'd be like, no, he's an edge. Here's an edge. Here's why he's an edge. And we'll take that skill set, and I'm going to project how it's going to translate if he was an edge. That doesn't mean he has to be that. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But ultimately, you have to do it based on what the skill set is of the player. From a scouting perspective, you don't do it based on just a position he plays. If you do that, you're obviously leaving a lot on the table. Ify Melifonwu, he played corner in college. Lions looked at him, safety. Right? You have to look at it from that perspective. So that's where I'm coming from with it. My grades for him translated to center. Translated to him being best as a center. Didn't mean he can't play guard. Doesn't mean he shouldn't play guard. Translating best to play center. It is what it is. You got a different take a different take. That's cool with me. But I went through every single game this guy played in college. That's my take. And I've had some good experience doing this. All right? I've had some good experience doing the scouting stuff. So that's it. I'm just taking based on what I know and how I know to do it. Frazier played a little tackle. I think Frazier's a guard, right? It's like one of those things. Now, he might be able to play some tackle. I think he's a guard. Bears did move some mountains. They made some trades. I think that's on the table for us, too. I think a trade for a center is absolutely in play. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's, or not for a center, just a trade for an offensive lineman because it is so light in the interior, especially if you did want to get a center. Trade for an offensive lineman, I don't think should be off the table. It's not normal to happen during the offseason, but it's a very thin group in terms of true starters that you believe in. So for that reason, I think it's worth considering if you're going to move draft picks around anyway, you don't want to go the young route, throw a pick to a team that has a guy that's played. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think it's crazy. And I think it's something that the door actually may open up on this offseason. You don't see it a lot. Obviously, the Devontae trade happened last year. That was pretty good for the Rams. That's something that shouldn't be overlooked. It's going to be hard to pull a starter from another team on the O-line because they just don't give up players. But if there was one that made sense, I think they would do it. Dog Kong, I think you're missing the point. And I'll leave it on this. You're missing the point. The point isn't what you played, right? You make the determination based on the skill set. So here's what I'm saying. The way I was taught in terms of scouting was always based on position. You would grade a guy by a position. There was only certain grades a position could get. For example, if say you were scouting a fullback, right? You make a determination that guy's a fullback. The grades that a fullback can earn are limited to what we believe the value could also be of that position. So I can't grade a fullback with a grade that a quarterback has. That's malpractice. That's insane. He can't even get to those grades. He could be the best fullback of all time. He'll never get to that. He can't earn that grade. And that's the same idea that you carry over to position by position. We take the guys, we take his traits, we grade his traits, determine where does that position fit. It's even the same thing with a guy that doesn't change positions. Right? If you think about it from a safety perspective, just because I say a safety coming out is good doesn't mean he's good for everybody. He's got to be a safety that makes sense for the team that's drafting him. Like recently, we did a video for McNeil Warren out of Toledo. That's the last video I did. I might think he's a good safety. That's a plus safety, right? 6'2". But that doesn't mean for the Lions he's a 6'2". Because for what the Lions are looking for, like teams are going to have different variation of what do we believe is a free or a strong safety. Let's start there first. Do you have free or a strong? Once we make that determination, that's going to change how we view the player. He's going to fall into a completely different category immediately. He's no longer safety. He's now free safety or he's strong safety. We have to put those in the report. We have to put whether he's a free or a strong. If you don't put, and that's the very first line you see. So that changes what category he falls into immediately, which ultimately would change the grades that he could also earn. And it also changes the skill set. Same thing for linebacker. Will, Mike, what is he? All right, cool. We make that determination. Then every trade, and we're not even looking for the same traits anymore. This is the crazy part. You watch the player before you get to the grades because the grades aren't the same universally. A Mike and a Will linebacker don't have the same grades that you're measuring. You're measuring two different systems here for both players, right? Like, I can't measure Jack Campbell like I would with Alex Anzalone. They have two different skill sets. I expect two different things out of them. So they're going to fall into different trait grades. And based on the team, they're going to have different things they're looking at for what they do stylistically. So I think that's the main point I'm trying to make here, right? Every team can do it in a different way, but that's always the importance of it, is it's not universal, right? McNeil Warren could be loved by certain teams. That's like, dude, hey man, we want someone that's physical. We want a strong box safety. We want someone that's going to hit, that's going to be comfortable in zone. We don't care if this guy is going to go match up on our slot. We don't do that anyway. Just go be that piece for us. Then if you get the Lions, like, hey, man, we want him to match up with guys. That's probably not a fit. Every safety we bring in has to be able to play some, man. If he doesn't, that guy probably don't fit the Lions. If he doesn't have some, I mean, shoot, Jalen Mills out there covering dudes. Probably don't fit the Lions because that's how we play. What do you think about Proctor? I'm a Proctor guy. He's gifted. Not sure how he's going to be looked at as tackle or guard. I think he's going to be looked at as a guard, mainly for the reactive athleticism to me being a little bit lower, closer to average. Obviously, the power is ridiculous, but he's an athlete in space. I think he's going to be looked at as a guard in the NFL, and I think for that reason, it could push him down the board a touch to a back half first round kind of idea, maybe further. I think that's what's going to hurt him, to be honest, and where he gets drafted. But ultimately, I do think that he's going to be a guard, and he'll probably start day one. Is kind of where I'm at with it. And move Sewell. That's an option too. You would have to go get a right tackle. So, I mean, it's an option, but you'd have to go get another tackle. That's not easy to find. It's an option, though. Is the injured position. Okay. Well, that's crazy work. Stephon Diggs was released. I saw this stuff coming out today. I didn't know what he did. Oh, Trayvon Diggs just called me to tell me he was released. Was not a result of a specific incident. It was a culmination of factors spread over time. Huh. He goes to the waiver, and if he goes and plays, becomes free agent. Oh, geez. I don't know what's going on there, dude. I know he doesn't really tackle, but I don't know what he's. I thought it was the other Diggs. I saw the Stephon Diggs stuff come out. Oh, that's insane. Get a real offense coordinator and don't let Dan interfere. We'll probably see that this year. But again, I think Dan's always going to interfere because it's his team. It's kind of like the whole Sheila Ham thing where it's like, hey, man, I hate that ownership's involved, like with Jerry Jones. Well, Sheila's got to be involved to an extent because if she's not, it's your team, bro. You're just going to watch this thing fall apart and ask people who I should hire? Like, no, dude, that's your job. So I think for Dan, it's kind of the same idea. It's like he doesn't have to interfere on a game day. I mean, he will because he's aggressive on fourth and stuff like that. But for the most part, he's got to interfere to an extent where it's like, this is how I want it to look. Because if it's not looking like a Dan Campbell offense, philosophically, style-wise, he won't hire that guy to me. He won't just hire, this is the best he'll see, hire him. He won't do that because it's got to look like Dan's vision. And because Dan's vision also meshes with Brad Holmes' vision, which is how they build the roster. So the roster also needs to make sense for it too. So I think especially on the early process, he has to interview aggressively. But once we're in the season, that was our point 5, which was trust. I'm with you. He's got to have the trust to be like, yo, I'm just going to step back. Whoever that is, like, because Dan Campbell doing all these other things knowingly, I think it's a problem. Yeah, that's wild. 15 minutes ago. Yeah, that's wild. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah. All right. Well, look, man, I'm going to wrap it there. I appreciate y'all joining. Shout out to my man, David. Like for this year coming up, I believe we need to draft our corner, not a safety that can play corner, a corner, and that's it. Okay, there's a lot of corner going on here because we can't bank on what you can't possibly play. This is true. That's why I got my guy Pons, man. That's why I'm gonna drop my new Pons, you know. And look, man, we're gonna have 4 corners coming in without making any moves. Dorsey will be here. Hopefully his hand's better. I think Rocky Sin will probably get re-signed. Amik, I don't know. At safety, you'll have Kirby, you'll have Branch. We'll see on Kirby's health. That'll be a big factor. You also have Thomas Harper. I like Thomas Harper, so I feel pretty good. Like a lot of these spots, you have your key contributors that are here. But again, we don't have a slot. To me, we just don't have a slot corner. We have guys that, well, maybe they could, but we don't have a slot. If I pulled 100 people, who's the line to slot corner next year, there'd be a lot of random names in there, right? There'd be a lot of, maybe DJ Reed, he could do it. Like, it's going to be a lot of that. Maybe you could. But right now, I don't know who that is. Figure that out, bro. We should know these things, and we don't. Man. And no linebacker stopped the run. Well, yeah. What I honestly think Alex is going to get re-signed. As of this moment, I think Alex gets re-signed. We have Campbell. Malcolm's a free agent. Barnes is under contract. I think Alex gets re-signed. I think. We'll see. Could be off. Malcolm could too. Malcolm's going to be cheaper. I would like to keep Malcolm. Coming into this season, I thought the future would be Malcolm. Alex would walk. But at this minute, I don't think they're going to be that aggressive in free agency anyway. I think you'll get a mid-level pay to a guard or an interior offensive lineman. I think you'll get a potentially re-signing. You'll get a couple of those re-signings. You'll get Alex. I think maybe that gets thrown into that mix. I think Graham will be let go. You'll get some like minimum deals to tight ends. You'll get maybe a minimum deal to another safety. Probably nothing super aggressive there. Maybe a midline deal to a cornerback. Like that's like I said, that's the other one I would open up as a slot corner. But I don't think you're going to pay a ton just because you paid Reed a ton. Like they won't put big money to two guys. I think the best two rookies next season, Hassanin and Tesla. Hassanin could be very valuable, man. And that's the thing too. We're like I was saying at the beginning. I think Pascal's going to walk. I think Davenport's probably going to walk. We'll see on Muhammad. I think he could be re-signed. But Hassanin did show you in the preseason that he's going to bring the value of stopping the run. And there is a place for that on this team. I think there's always going to be a place for that with how we play. And so because you have that, I think you have flexibility to move off some of those other guys and just allow him to be that, continue to be that, and then we'll see where the development can go as a pass rusher. We'll see if he can start to make an impact there. But regardless, he's going to play the run. So I think there's always going to be a spot for him on the roster. You know, I don't want to forget about guys like Mekhi Wingo, who really never played this year. I don't know what it looks like, but I don't want to overlook him. He's kind of in a weird spot trying to find a position. But you'll have some dudes. You'll just have some unproven dudes. But I think Achman's got a role. He's always going to have a role in this team. He probably won't start next year. I mean, maybe at some point he does. But he'll have a spot. And they got to get that done because I don't think he's under contract yet for next year. They got to get that done. So, could we move him to linebacker? Would be great. Achman at linebacker would be insane. That would be insane. You got to blitz him every play, bro. Running backs would hate that. Could you imagine getting hit by Achman every play? Oh, my gosh. How big has a linebacker been? Has there ever been that? That would be ridiculous. That dude blitz every single play for me. Oh, my goodness, man. All right, chat. I think we hit on everything, man. I appreciate y'all joining. Again, go check out Dose of Draft. It's on YouTube. Just, Google. That's our other channel. We're rolling over there. We're going to get another video out here soon. Someone gave me a player. If you guys comment on the videos, like a player you want to see, I'll do those because I'm just kind of picking random ones. I'm watching guys and just picking random players to do video on. Someone gave me a name. I don't remember who it was. I got to go back and check. I'm going to do that one next, I think, unless he's like not going to get drafted. Then I probably won't. But I think I'm going to do that one next because someone commented it. So we'll do that. A gap filled quick. Yeah, that would be. I mean, coverage support would be a disaster, right? Like I don't know I'd ever drop him into coverage. He'd be like the Rams guy that went to Buffalo. That's how he'd be. He'd be like what was that big dude? This guy always comes to my mind. I can't think what his name was now. Like he would do kind of everything. He'd be like that guy. That's got to be the biggest linebacker. Technically linebacker. Bills sign Michael Hoyt. Michael Hoyt was considered a DN, but he was kind of a linebacker. He was kind of a linebacker though, to be honest. He dropped a ton and he played everywhere. That's a big dude though. Oh, Michael Hoyt, big dude, man. All right. He's a cross trainer. He's got moves. Shoot. Hey, man. I'm here for it, dude. I'm here for all the craziness, man. This is what the offseason's about. Let's try it. Let's see what it looks like. Put him back there. Just hit guys, man. Bro, no one's gonna lead block for that dude, bro. Nobody's gonna want that smoke. And by the way, shout out to Campbell for getting a lot better in coverage this year. Man, specifically. Brian Fleury, we talked about a little bit yesterday in the video. I think he's an interesting option. Let me go back to that. I had a couple of names I actually wrote down today. I didn't talk about any of them that I thought were interesting. Thomas Brown, doubtful, 39 years old, was the interim head coach for the Chicago Bears before Ben Johnson took over. But he's called plays multiple times before in the past. He was the play caller for Carolina, I believe, back in 2023. He was with the Rams for a while. I think he's an interesting name. He actually interviewed for the Patriots to be the offense coordinator this offseason. Didn't get the job, but they hired him as their tight ends coach. So he got that, which would be beneficial. We could use the tight ends coach. But also, he was hired as, I think, like an offensive assistant or pass game coordinator. So someone like that could be interesting. You know what would be cool, too? Not as an OC, maybe, but like, I don't know what his role would be. Like JT Barrett coming back. JT Barrett's going to have some buzz. Being on a good team like that, being the quarterback coach for Caleb, he's going to have some buzz. I don't know where he would jump to, though, outside of pass game coordinator. So maybe he could potentially return if Lions cleaned house. That could be something that's interesting. Let me make sure. I don't know who in the world I wrote down here. I'm not sure what that says, to be honest with you. There's a couple on here. We talked about the Dolphins run game special. I think he'd be potentially an interesting run game coordinator to bring in. You have Zach Sheriff, I think is his name. Zach Sheriff? No, that ain't his name. He's the run game coordinator for the Denver Broncos. And then there's Justin. Don't know his name. I'm going to be honest, bro. Some of these I can't read. All right. I like my guy, GJ. Okay. I focused on that guy. Let me just talk about that guy. And then also Indiana's quarterback coach / co-offensive coordinator, which I think is interesting too, because they put a lot of responsibilities on their coordinators there. Chandler Whitmer. That could be interesting too if you want to go back to the collegiate level. The guy that's called plays and stylistically could make a lot of sense. He's going to have some buzz too this offseason. Yeah, dude, honestly, you can't go wrong with those guys. McVay, Shanahan, just for the run game element. Now, we talked about, I don't think there's a clear guy to go to that's at the Rams right now outside of their O-line coach. I don't think we'll do that, but Ryan Wendell, we talked about him yesterday. 49ers are kind of in the same boat, but there's a couple of options. Flory, there's a couple of options there potentially that could help. I would like either of those. I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm kind of just looking at coach Green Bay. I would look at a Green Bay coaching tree guy for sure. Those three teams, Green Bay. There was another team too, Washington, but Washington's got a weird staff. They're all kind of like old. I don't know what they're doing over there. They got a weird staff, so probably not Washington. There was another team. I can't remember who it was. I don't know. I'll remember at some point. I don't remember who it was. There was another team. I just don't remember who it was. But like, I'm with you. I'd look at the team and just kind of look at the tree kind of thing, and then go from there. Then it's like, okay, we found that part. Now does he do it like Dan? And I feel very positive that whoever we hire will have been an offensive coordinator before. I feel very positive about that he will have been an OC. And, that could be just one of our own guys, but I feel very positive. Wink as DC shouldn't be as crazy as it sounds. I don't think that's going to happen, man. That's going to be Wink's defense. I think Kelvin Shepard stays. I like Wink, but I don't think that would happen. I think Kelvin's going to stay. Hopefully Mike McDaniels gets fired. He would be our OC. Mike McDaniels could be an interesting OC. They will question his rushing, like as we talked about yesterday, rushing attempts. I don't always love his passing game scheme, but I'm a fan of his run game. Again, Mike McDaniel kind of does his own thing. So how well would that connect with Dan? I don't know. I think Mike McDaniel is one of those guys that's a big name, but may not be that on the Lions' radar because I don't know how well Dan would feel like that would mesh with how he likes to do things. And there would be, I don't know how much pushback there would be. I think he'd be smart offensive mind. I think he really would be. I think it'd be beneficial if you could make it work. If Dan could come aboard for it and feel like, okay, we're going to connect well, and you could kind of just back off. But I just think there's going to be some weird overlap, which wouldn't allow that to happen, which is why I don't really think it's going to happen. But I like him. I like him a lot. I mean, he'd be valuable. He'd be a smart guy. I just don't think it fits the style of what Dan does. So I don't think they'd go that route. If it fits the style, I think they'd do it. I just don't think it fits the style. I think it's got to look like a Dan Campbell offense, and we look very similar this year to the years before. Defensively look very similar. Whoever they hire, I don't think it's going to be the biggest name. I think it's going to be a guy that fits how he likes to do it. I don't think that's going to change. Could be wrong. Could be wrong on that, but I don't think it'll be aggressively changed. I don't think it needs to be necessarily. I just think we need a better run game mind, to be honest with you. I think we just need that. And probably going the route of the pass game over the run game was maybe an issue. It felt like we were trying to kind of replace that with having lost Ben, which is fair because that's what he was doing. And we replaced it. But it's almost like either keep some of the staff that's here for that or potentially go and get some of those new staff member for that. But coaching-wise, like play calling, that's going to be the key. Timing of play calling, and I think getting back to the run game element. Because that's the only clear way to get a guy that would fill into that role and clearly have that say to make sure that it's a big implementation of the offense, which is why I really like my guy from Tampa Bay. Kevin Carberry that we talked about yesterday. I think that's really cool too because he brings that a little bit of play calling. I think that's an interesting one. Bring back the fun, hook and ladders all day. Yeah, dude, honestly, and everything we did fun was bad. Like, it wasn't a lot of good. Like, there was a lot of, like, kind of good. Like, the St. Brown play. It was like, that was a fun play. And the fact that we didn't score And it stings too, because like there's really nothing we could have did with that. It's just that Hayward made the play. It's just we got to get back to running the ball, bro. Like we have to get back to being dominant up front. I think for this stuff to come back. I just don't think we're there. I think with all you made a lot of moves. Gronkowski had a big background and stuff like that, and we just didn't have it consistently because we couldn't run the freaking ball. We couldn't be efficient on first down. It was like the whole season we're just trying to figure that out, and then we just weren't polished. We make dumb mistakes all the time, and it's like we're not blocking that guy. I don't know why. Guy whiffed, or we didn't assign a block to him. Like we just didn't block the guy, so nothing's gonna happen here. And it's like if you can't trust that, you know it's gonna go bad. Like even the one that Goff dropped. You guys remember the throwback? Goff dropped it, and it was like, oh my god, that was just our season, man. It was just like everything was messed up all the time, bro. Even if it was there, it's like, yeah, we messed that up. I don't know. He dropped it. I think Brad speaks to the team like the week after the game, after our last game. I think. I think that's what they do. And Monty got the extension, so Monty's not going anywhere. I don't think they're going to cut Monty. They don't save really anything this year. It'd be next year. So, yeah, you got to get that right. If that doesn't get right, you're not the Lions. You know, I will not root for the Bears or no, me neither, man. I'll be honest with you. I'm probably going to struggle to watch any of those games because I'm bitter still. I'm going to be so bitter after the last game, especially if we don't win. Oh my gosh, I might not watch the playoffs, bro. I'm like, I want to, but it's like because it's football. But man, I'm gonna be so mad. I like to live stream a few of them, but I'm just gonna be so frustrated, dude. I can't stand these, dude. I cannot believe the Packers are making the playoffs this year. What in the world, bro? They're 9-6-1, man. They're 9-6-1, and they might lose to the Vikings this week. Like, oh gosh, they should not be in the playoffs, dude. But I remind myself, we shouldn't be either. You know, we probably shouldn't be either. I'd like to. I feel like we'd have the same chance Green Bay does, but probably shouldn't be in there either when we lost to them twice. That's fair. It's only fair. Like, we've won one division game. I guess that's fair. By the way, side note, just before we end this, I can't be the only person. And this just, I mean, that it creeped in your mind a little bit after that Vikings game or during the Vikings game. This got to be fixed. Like, there's no doubt. Like, you had to a little bit. Like, there's something wrong with what I'm watching on TV right now. There's no way this is actually happening. Y'all can't tell me that there was a moment at some point y'all were watching it like, is this real? Like, are we really going to believe what I'm watching? I've only watched play a couple times. The first false start call, like, really, bro? Y'all called that a false start? Really, bro? You know what we were trying to do. You called a false start? And then, right? It's a 3rd down and 1, and they call a timeout to challenge to make it 3rd down and 1. Who does that? We come back from the timeout and fumble? Like, really, bro? That just happened? You know, it was just weird, dude. It's like, there's a way to explain this away. You know, you got a new center. How does that happen? How does that happen, bro? Like, the timing is unreal here. Because it's not like, hey, 2nd down, you had a false start. Or, hey, you picked it the 1st down and then you fumbled. No, they challenged it for 3rd and 1 and then you fumbled. Like, man, what am I looking at, dude? This has to be fake. I was questioning reality watching that game. And the disappointing thing is, the whole time in the first time watching, like, all right, we're off to a slow start, but we're going to handle business. I felt pretty good watching the first half. And on that long drive where Goff was hitting big plays, like, oh, dude, we're going to win this thing. You look back and you're like, dude, how did we lose that? I don't know. I think Mike Kafka's interesting because he has a lot of experience. I think Mike Kafka's interesting. Right now, he's the interim, though, yeah? Is it at New York, or is he? Yeah, he's the interim head coach. I think it's interesting. I think Nate Maloney's interesting. I'll have to dig more into it, but I think it's interesting. Anyways, I just had to put that out there. Like this, what I was watching was not real life. For really 2 quarters was not real life. Second half was like, okay, this looks normal. First half was so goofy. And it was just like, how is this happening? I guess like it's one of the things, like you just can't make this up. This is just who we are. We can't make this up. Dan does, scheme, talent. Again, yeah, I don't have a major issue with the scheme stuff. I don't feel like we were getting like we were putting ourselves in all positions all the time. I think at times we did. I just think again, I think it boils down to this. This is how I sum it. We had a small margin for error. We made a lot of errors. And by the end of the season, defensively, unfortunately, we didn't have the personnel to be the Lions. And we never were the Lions this year, really past the midpoint of the season offensively. We were kind of just figuring it out. And I feel like that's what. Now, hey, look, that's not an excuse for Dan because a lot of it feels like the only thing you can blame it on is coaching. When you have multiple players stepping in, there's mistakes. Who else do you throw the blame on? It's got to be coaching. But, hey, look, man, bad season isn't always the worst thing, right? It doesn't have to be the worst thing. It's how do we respond to it? And this could be a really good learning experience, right? Hopefully it is. And it seems like Dan seemed to take it really rough this season. Like even his pressers were just less joyous. He felt down all the time. And I understand that. Like I always think about it as a fan. Yeah, I'm frustrated, but I don't do this. Like I'm not spending my entire week preparing each week for this stuff. I mean, I watch the film, but it's not like that. I don't put the time in, the hours they do to this. You know what I mean? Like taking over play calling, putting it on your shoulders. Like I don't do those things. So like I can imagine how it's eating at him. And look, he gets paid for it. So, you know, it's not like he doesn't get compensated for it. But like at the same time, man, I know he was going through it. And you could just feel it. You could just feel the energy. Really, the last like 4 or 5 weeks, it just was gone from him, it felt like. And it was weird. It was weird. So I'm hoping next year, and I think it will, just because he's a football guy, man. I think it's gonna be rough initially. I think he really wants to win this game, but I think even if he does, he's gonna be down. But I think after a few weeks, being a football guy like he is, he's gonna be as energized as ever, man. I think he's gonna be fired up, and he'll get after it. I think he's human, man. He's down a little bit, and it's like this is rough, dude. This was not supposed to go this way. So I don't know. I think we'll be fine, but I feel for those dudes, man. Makes me sad when he looks like so depressed. And I get it. Like there's not, but it's just like, dude, man, this is not the Dan I know, dude. I want the fired up Dan Campbell. And it's just hard to grab from anything right now. It's sad, dude. That's a guy that I want. But I think that's because he wears his emotions on his sleeve and you feel it. It's not like Goff. Goff is always kind of like this. I think Dan wears it a little bit more. So you feel it when it's not going great. And at this point, because of expectation, it's also not like the years past where it was just sad. It was more like just frustration. You felt it. And if anything, if he's the guy that I think he is, just going to fire him up for like, dude, we got to fix this thing. Like that he, it's going to be as motivating as ever. And I think, hopefully you take it the right way, but motivation, man, could be a really good thing for him. It could be a really good thing for him this year to have this take place. And like, hey, man, we're making sure there's no stone unturned in everything that we do. New coaching staff, whatever that is, player that we acquire, not overlooking the little things. What happens if this takes place? Like, we will not overlook a thing. And I think Dan just has that. I think that's just who he is, man. He's not cool with this. And I kind of like the fact that you can see it when you listen to him, like, and you can hear it. He's not cool with this. Thank you, Dose, for your broadcast all year long. I appreciate you. God bless you as well. And thank you as well. I wouldn't worry about the schedule because bad teams are bad. This is true. And this year we lose some bad teams now. I guess Vikings got it rolling a bit, so maybe not. Gavis, I appreciate you, man. We're going to get out of here. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys soon. Check out Dose of Draft for some draft content, man. If you're just joining, run it back. I showed a little mock. Show it again. Bam. A little mock draft on the way out. And we out of here, man.